Have you ever caught yourself trying to think in English, but your brain keeps snapping back to your native language?
You study. You listen. You understand a lot. But when you try to think in English, it feels like your mind hits a wall.
It's frustrating, right? You want to be fluent. You want to feel confident. But your thoughts just don't show up in English.
Today we're going to break that wall. Not just with tips, but with strategies to help your brain make the switch naturally.
And to help you go even further, we created a free downloadable PDF. It's in the description, and it's packed with tools to support what you'll hear in this episode.
So if you're ready to stop translating, start thinking clearly, and take control of your English learning,
this episode is for you. Let's get started. Let's talk about why thinking in English feels so difficult for many learners.
one of the biggest reasons is simple. Your brain has been operating in your first language since you were born. It's automatic. It's comfortable. It's fast.
So when you try to form a thought in English, your brain doesn't feel ready. It defaults to your native language, and that's when translation kicks in.
And translation slows everything down. It breaks your flow and makes you second-guess every word. That hesitation can feel like a mental roadblock.
There's also the issue of vocabulary. If you don't have the words you need available in your mind, it's hard to think clearly or express yourself.
That's when you freeze. You go silent. And the more that happens, the more uncomfortable thinking in English becomes.
Another big challenge is fear of making mistakes. A lot of learners are so afraid of saying something wrong that they avoid thinking or speaking altogether.
That fear creates tension. And when your mind is tense, it's hard to think in any language, especially a new one.
We've seen this so many times. Learners who know English very well but still struggle to use it spontaneously.
And often, it's not about lack of knowledge, it's about mental habits. Patterns your brain has practiced for years.
But here's the good news. Those habits can be changed.
The first step is awareness. Recognize what's really holding you back, whether it's translating, fear, or lack of words.
Because once you know what's getting in your way, you can start to retrain your brain, and that's when real progress begins. Now that we've talked about the challenges, let's focus on practical ways to start thinking in English more naturally.
One simple method is to narrate your actions. As you move through your day, say in your mind what you're doing. I'm getting out of bed. I'm making coffee. I'm checking my phone.
This creates a habit of using English in real time. You're not studying, you're living in English.
And over time, your brain begins to accept English as a normal way of thinking. That's when real change starts to happen.
Another great technique is to describe what you see. There's a plant on the table. The sky is cloudy today. My shoes are next to the door.
It may sound basic, but this is how you build fluency, by connecting English to your surroundings, not just to textbooks.
Let's talk about vocabulary. Knowing more words gives your brain the tools it needs to form thoughts. But don't just collect new words, use them.
Write them down. Say them out loud. Use apps that help with spaced repetition. The more your brain sees and uses a word, the more naturally it will come to you.
And don't wait for a perfect sentence. If you can think in pieces, that's a great start. I'm hungry. Want coffee? It's okay. Fluency begins with fragments.
Reading also helps. Books, blogs, social media posts, whatever keeps you interested. Read every day, even if it's just a few sentences.
The key is consistency. These small habits add up. Day by day, they retrain your brain to think in English without hesitation. Let's take a closer look at some useful words we mentioned earlier in the episode.
Vocabulary. Definition. The set of words that a person knows and uses. Example. Expanding your vocabulary helps you express yourself more clearly. Describe. Definition. To talk about something by giving details. Example. You can describe your surroundings to practice thinking in English. Repetition. Definition. The act of doing something again and again. Example. Spaced repetition helps you remember vocabulary over time. Freeze. Definition. To suddenly stop moving or speaking because of fear or uncertainty. Some learners freeze when they try to think in English and don't know what to say.
Understanding these words makes it easier to connect with the strategies we're sharing today.
Let's talk about one of the most effective ways to think in English. Immersion.
Immersion means surrounding yourself with English in your daily life, not just during study time, but throughout your day.
One powerful way to do this is through reading. And you don't need to start with complicated books. Choose something simple and enjoyable: articles, short stories, even blog posts.
And if you love a specific genre, like mystery or romance, look for English versions of those stories. Interest makes learning easier.
As you read, keep a notebook nearby. Write down new words or phrases you find interesting. That small habit helps grow your vocabulary and reinforces what you're learning.
Listening is also key. English music, podcasts, YouTube channels, whatever keeps you engaged. But don't just listen passively. Pay attention. Try to follow the lyrics or summarize what you hear.
You can even sing along or repeat phrases out loud. This helps your pronunciation and connects sounds to meaning.
And of course, watching movies and TV shows in English is another great form of immersion. If you've already seen the movie in your native language, rewatch it in English with subtitles. It's a great way to train your brain.
It helps you connect spoken language to written words. You start to notice how real English sounds, how it flows in everyday situations.
Online communities are another great tool. Join English-speaking groups on social media. Participate in comment sections. Read and respond in English.
You don't have to travel to practice immersion. You can build an English environment right where you are.
The more English you include in your daily life, the more natural it becomes to think in it. It stops feeling like a foreign language and starts feeling familiar.
Let's move on to something just as important as immersion: conversations. Speaking with others is one of the best ways to train your brain to think in English.
Even short conversations help. They push you to think quickly, form ideas, and respond without translating.
Language exchange apps like HelloTalk or Tandem are great for this. They connect you with native English speakers who want to learn your language too. It's a win-win.
You don't need perfect grammar. You just need to connect. Ask questions. Share something about your day. Respond naturally.
And if you prefer real-time interaction, look for conversation groups or English clubs, either in your area or online. These spaces are designed for practice, not perfection.
The more often you speak, the more comfortable your brain becomes with English. Over time, your mind stops reaching for your native language and starts thinking directly in English.
It's like training a muscle. The more you use it, the stronger it gets.
And don't underestimate the power of small talk. A 5-minute chat every day can make a big difference.
Every time you speak, you're creating new connections in your brain. That's how real fluency begins, not just through studying, but through using the language in real life.
So don't wait for the perfect moment. Speak now, even if it's just a little. That little bit builds your confidence, one conversation at a time.
Let's take a moment to talk about something that's often overlooked in language learning: patience.
Many learners get discouraged because they feel like they're not improving fast enough. But real progress doesn't always look dramatic. It often happens in small, quiet steps.
Maybe today you understood more of a podcast than yesterday. Maybe you remembered a word without looking it up. Those are wins.
And they matter. Celebrating small wins gives you the motivation to keep going. It reminds you that you are growing, even when it doesn't feel obvious.
Everyone learns at a different pace. Comparing yourself to others won't help. Your path is yours, and every step forward counts.
One helpful practice is to keep a journal. Write down new words you've learned, things you understood in English, or times when you felt more confident.
Looking back, you'll see just how far you've come. It's not about perfection. It's about persistence.
Fluency takes time. It's a long-term process built on daily effort and self-kindness.
So give yourself space to grow. Trust the process. And recognize that every word, every sentence, every effort, it all adds up.
You're not stuck. You're just in motion. And every small win is a sign that you're moving forward. Let's take another look at some key words from this episode. These are useful terms that came up in our discussion.
Immersion. Definition. Surrounding yourself with a language as much as possible to improve learning. Example. Watching movies and reading books in English is a form of immersion. Listening. Definition. Paying attention to sounds in order to understand what is being said. Example. Listening to podcasts or music in English helps you get used to the language. Subtitle. Definition. The written text of spoken words, shown on screen in movies or videos. Example. Watching a show with English. Subtitles helps you connect what you hear with what you read. Conversation. Definition. A talk between two or more people, usually informal. Example. Having short conversations in English. Every day helps build fluency.
The more you understand these words, the more confident you'll feel using them in real situations.
And using them regularly is the best way to make them part of your thinking.
Now let's shift to some practical strategies you can use to speak English more confidently.
One of the most effective things you can do is talk to yourself. It might feel strange at first, but it's powerful. Describe what you're doing. Express how you feel. Pretend you're explaining your day to someone.
When you speak out loud, even if no one's listening, you're training your brain to form thoughts in English quickly and naturally.
You can also record yourself. Then listen back. Notice your pronunciation, your rhythm, and how fluent you sound. Over time, you'll hear your own progress.
Another great method is mimicking native speakers. Pick a short clip from a movie or podcast. Listen to how the speaker talks, then try to copy exactly how they say it.
This improves your pronunciation, intonation, and confidence. You're not just learning the words. You're learning how they feel when spoken.
If you can, practice with a partner, a classmate, a friend, or someone you meet on a language exchange app. Regular conversations, even short ones, help you get comfortable using English in real situations.
And don't be afraid to make mistakes. Every error is part of the learning process. The more you speak, the more fluent you become.
These habits might seem small, but they're powerful. When you practice a little every day, speaking in English becomes more natural, just like thinking in it. As we wrap up today's episode, remember this. Thinking in English is not a gift. It's a skill. And like any skill, it gets stronger with practice.
It's not about being perfect. It's about being consistent. Every time you try, you're making progress, even if it's not immediately visible.
If you've reached the point where you understand English but still find it hard to speak, don't worry, you're not alone. That's exactly what we're going to talk about in the next episode.
It's called I Can Understand English, but I Can't Speak. And we'll go even deeper into strategies to help you speak with more confidence and less fear.
So make sure you're subscribed, and if you found today's episode helpful, leave us a comment and share it with a friend who's learning English too.
We'd love to hear from you. What's one thing you're going to start doing today to help your brain think in English? Let us know below.
And don't forget to download your free PDF. It's in the description and it'll help you put everything into practice.
Thanks for joining us today. We're so glad you're here and we can't wait to see how far you go.
Keep learning, keep practicing. And we'll see you in the next episode.